Hi everyone, so I couldn't help it. It is Christmas, and so I'm wearing my Christmas sweater. I'm wearing my fun shirt with my Christmas lights because we don't have them on our house, but I would love to have them on the house. We're focusing on a really important vowel R syllable, and that vowel R syllable is the OR. And what makes that sound? OR. Now, the vowel R syllable of OR says OR. When it's all by itself like this. Now, when you have OR at the end of a word, most of the time, you need to remember that. You're going to spell it O-R-E. You're not going to spell it by itself as the vowel R. So it is going to be, for instance, more, or. So you have some unusual words that, for instance, we have the word for, and we have or. We have some of those words that do not follow that rule. And these are so common that we still use them. For instance, like the word for, it has a different meaning if you put the E on the end. If we put the E on the word or, you're going to have a different meaning. So there's a reason we do not have the E's on the end, and the reasons we do have the E's on the end. So let's look at some of these. Or. O-R-E at the end of a word is or. So if you hear or at the end of a word, spell it O-R-E most of the time. So if you're guessing, then you're going to guess O-R-E. If you're reading, O-R-E reads or. Now, O-R at the end of a word also reads or, but there are very few like this. Now we have soar, s, or. Now we could even say that this is a silent E syllable because we have O-er, or, but it still says or, but I would still call these silent E syllables. K, or. See? Or. So it's basically that sound. St, or, store. More, soar, core, store. These are words that we use all of the time in the English language. W, or, war, shore, sh, or, hardcore. Now, also, if you have multi-syllable words, and this is a compound word, so it breaks right here, hardcore. Now remember, a compound word is when you put two small words together, like hard and core, and you make them one, and they mean one specific thing. So it happens even in those. Now remember, if you're going to use the word, the small little word by itself, in a compound word, you spell it exactly the same as you would. Because oftentimes in multi-syllable words, things change a little bit at the end. It's not part of or, but for instance, let's say we want to say sick. That's how you'd spell it by itself. But if you want to say music, see how we spell things a little bit different in multi-syllable words, but we do not do that when we are spelling compound words. Now this is a multi-syllable word, but this is a multi-syllable word that has its very own word. These are two words put together to make a word, if that makes sense. Now this says carnivore. So see how it works in multi-syllable words? AR says R, this is a vowel R syllable, and this is an open I in the middle of a word, so it's saying I, and then vor, v, or. Now I wanted to show you something that's really, really tricky in the English language. And really when you're growing up in the English language, you just learn these. You don't really understand really what's going on there. You just memorize them, and you memorize how to spell them, and you memorize how to read them. Now when you have a W, and this doesn't happen with every single word, but it happens with lots of words. When you have W-O, and then you have, if it's in the middle like this, see? And this says word, word. We don't say ward because ward is spelled like this. And the AR says something different when it's by a W. So this is something that you're going to have to study a little bit if you're first learning English. And even a child has to study this, but they just memorize it when they're young and they learn it. But that's what's so tricky about the W. It doesn't happen with any other letter but the W. So this says, so the OR, when it's next to a W, it says w-erd, w-erd. We don't say war, or. Typically it says or. Word, w-erk, work, w-erld, world, w-erld, world. See how it's saying the sound. The sound, when it's by itself, and it's in lots and lots, hundreds, I would say thousands of words, is ER. That's that sound. When you see OR, when it's by a W, says this sound. It says the ER sound. Worth, worth, by work. So, in lots of multi-syllable words, in compound words, this is a compound word, we're still reading that as work. Sometimes things switch up in some words. This is just a for instance. If we say human, hue, and then that turns to schwa, but man by itself says man. And so sometimes things switch up a little bit, but most of the time if it's a compound word, you're still saying that exactly how it would be if it was by itself. Now this says worm, worm. Now, most of the time people think it says warm. This is one of the most confusable words in the English language because AR says R. And so you would think that worm would be, this gets confused with worm. Warm and worm. This is saying and this is saying or. That's why it's so confusing. This is why these two words are crazy confusing. This is worm, it's saying the ER sound, and this is warm, that's saying the OR sound. So a lot of people want to spell worm like this, but it's actually warm. Is that confusing?
I think some people would also want to spell it how it sounds. W-E-R-M.
Yeah, and some people would want to spell it how it sounds, and that would be W-E-R-M.
But
and
that's not an actual word.
It's not even an actual word to spell it how it sounds. So, worm, warm. So be very careful with that. Also, when you have something like this with the silent E, like all of these up here, it's not changing the sound. This said, O-R-E says or. So this says war. And that's the reason why this says war also, but AR says R. And that's why these are so tricky when you have the vowel R with the W's. So we'll go over more of these later. Worst, worst, worse. So see how the OR is being affected by the W. It's not going to happen with any other consonant besides the W. Now this is kind of fun. So sometimes, okay, so sometimes we have words like this, and it's saying the exact sound that the OR says. This says w-orn, w-orn. Part of the reason why this says this is because we have a worn this way. We have two different words that say worn, and they mean two different things. AR is saying the or, what the W would say in or. So this is worn, and this says worn. AR is actually following the rule with the WAR in this word, and we're not following the rule with this one. Does that make sense, Paul? These are two totally different words.
Yeah.
And wart, we have this wart, and then we have this wart. Mean completely different things. So we need them to have different.
Which one's which?
This is the wart that's on your hand or your foot. It's under your skin. And then this one is the name in plants, those things. Now, sworn, see how this is saying or, and I'm thinking that this one is kind of like that because we have S-W-O-R-E, swore. Honestly, I think the reason why this one is O-R is because of all of the participles. When you have your principal parts with this. This is your past, and this is your past participle. And I think these are connected, and I think that's the reason why they chose to do it that way. Password. Remember, we're saying word. We're not changing the sound when it's in a multi-syllable word. Now these are compound words. So compound words, you spell and say the word the same way. Homework, roadwork, roadworthy. We're going to talk about the vowel R when it's all by itself, just inside a word. So see how it's in the middle of a word like this. And so it's going to say or, what the vowel R by itself will say. Short. If you have a vowel R in the middle of a word or at the beginning of the word, you're going to spell it O-R. And if you see it, you're going to read it as or. Okay? So if you hear it at the beginning, you're going, so if you, let's say you want to spell the word short, and you're going to go shh. So S-H, and then you hear or, and then you spell your last sound. But up here, when we want to spell war, or, see, we just hear or, then you spell it O-R-E. This one would be a much trickier to spell because we also have war like that. Now we have force, force, force. See how it's in the middle of a word? It's saying or, you spell it or, north, 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 incorrect. Now I think this is really fun because you have a Latin root here, here's your prefix, and here's another prefix. This says core. You can hear it. A lot of times when you, like, let's say you have A-R-R, you change this to air. A-R says R, but when it's A-R-R, it says air. But it does not do that here, especially when it's a prefix and a Latin root. You say the prefix, core, and then you say the root, rect. You hear both of these R's that's making a slightly different sound. This R is connected to that vowel R. Now, right here, this is also a Latin root, fordable. Now, we have O-R in the middle, affordable. Actually, it breaks like this, affordable. That's actually how it totally breaks. It breaks here, affordable. That's how it breaks. Same here, distortion. See how it's in the middle of a word? You're going to read it or and spell it O-R. How about this one? Prehistoric. Now this is also one of those words where we have history. So this is ori, history. You're going, when you have an IC, we're going to drop the Y and add IC. Most of the time, we spell it H-I-S-T-O-R-Y. And let's say we want to change the Y to an I and add our plural ES. So see, IC and IZE, a lot of times we drop the Y when we are adding on this vowel suffix right here. So look, we have borrowing. See how this sounds? Borrow, borrow. So it's saying a different, we don't say borrowing or borrowing. So see how this one is different because it's part of a Latin root. I mean, this is part of your Latin prefix with your root. So you can hear that or solid right there. But right here, you can't, it's different. It's saying borrow, borrow. So it's arrow with that. So there's different things that say different sounds, but it's basically or. Here's some more words right here. Oh, and we went over those up there. For, nor, or. Those are words that we use all of the time.
True.
Yeah, all the time in our English language. In the English language, when you hear at the end of the word, most of the time it's going to spell with an ER. Let's hear this. Major. When you see OR all by itself at the end of a word, you do not say major. You say major. Okay? So if you hear or at the end of a word, you're going to spell it O-R-E. See, when we have or at the end of a word, almost always it's going to say major, motor, mayor, labor. I put check marks on all the ones. If you are studying British English, they will spell labor, L-A-B-O-U-R. I am assuming that is still coming from the French language, and they've kept it like that. But these right here, the British still spell it exactly how the English spell it. So be really careful, depending on which English you're spelling. If you are spelling British English, which Canadians speak British English, and in Europe. So depending on which one you want to know, you need to be careful with that. This says tutor. See how tutor. So see, it happens in multi-syllable words, and if you see OR at the end, it's going to say razor, humor, vigor. Now, see, this one, British English is O-U-R. Minor, actor, error, color. Now, British English is C-O-L-O-U-R, which makes it hard to put the smiley face on there. That's how I would teach the kids to remember how to spell color. Honor, donor. Honor is O-U-R, British English. Parlor is O-U-R in the British. Fervor is also O-U-R, British English. Harbor, O-U-R for harbor. Flavor is O-U-R. Visitor. Visitor. And that is spelled the same. Tractor. This is fun because this is your Latin root right here. It means to pull, and if you think about a tractor, it's pulling something. Tailor, savor, and this is O-U-R also. Savor. I really hope this lesson was super helpful.